Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to talk about heart rate training and getting into the right zones and how it's going to affect your training and your racing. Let's get into it. Firstly, how do we measure heart rate? So you can use the optical sensors on the bottom of most watches, Apple watches, Garmin's, Polars, there's a few different types, Fitbits. They're fairly accurate. The technology is pretty good. It's optical sensors measuring blood flow, so it's not a bad way of doing it, and it's really convenient. However, a bit more accurate is a chest strap. So there are a few different variations of this. So you can use a Garmin one, a Polar one, and what I particularly like to use is the MyZone strap. And they all have their own apps, they all connect slightly differently. The nice thing is they all pretty much interconnect to a watch. So if you're looking for the data on a watch, they all pull through to that device, so you can see it as you're out on the move. The reason I like to use a MyZone one is because of the display. So the app gives you really clear, colourful visual feedback. So when you're training, you have something to look at. I like to set mine up on the gym floor, and no matter where I am, I can kind of take a quick glance and have an idea of I'm in the right training zone. So let's go into that. There are generally 5 training zones, 1 to 5. 5 being all out max effort, and 1 nice, easy, active recovery. So what does that matter, and how do we train them, and does it matter which zone we're in, and how do we find out what zone is what for me? Everyone's heart rate is slightly different, so it's really down to genetic, down to fitness level. The old approach of 220 minus your age gives you a very rough indication. It's not that accurate. It's not something I would want to base my data on. I'm really keen on data. I like to know exactly what's going on, and that I'm going about things in the most scientific and the most accurate way possible to get the most bang out of my buck for my training time. You know, everyone's busy, so I don't want to be going in and spending time in an area that's not going to benefit my race. So to find out your zones, you're going to need to know your max heart rate. You can do this by getting out there, heart rate monitor on, strap or sensor, and blasting through some pretty hard efforts. Something like a 5k or a 3k max effort. I'm blasting through some efforts. Something like a 3k all-out time trial running would be able to provide that kind of information. Or big hill sprints. Another great way of doing it, finding a 2-minute long hill and doing a couple of hill repeats. That's the kind of session where you're going to find out what kind of top range you're at. The nice thing about the MyZone for myself is I've had data like that, put it in, worked it out, and then been working out and found that actually it's moved. I've got an extra, I've got an extra 1% there. I've got an extra, 1 beat per minute that I wasn't aware of. It auto calculates, so it gives you your zones from that. One thing I would say about doing these kind of stress tests is they are brutal. So if you've got no background in training, you're fairly new to fitness, and this is a new journey for you, I'd definitely go and check with your doctor before starting to ramp up any stress tests and trying to find out the top end. That might be a point of, right, okay, maybe you do take the 220, you minus your age, and you have a conversation with your doctor, and then start having, gradually seeing the improvement, and as you get a bit fitter, move towards doing a few more interval style sessions. So that's just a word of warning. These are not for the faint of heart. Get in there, get the session done, find that max heart rate if it's appropriate for you and you know where you're at. So once you've got your max heart rate, you're also going to need to know your resting heart rate. So the nice thing about things like Garmin's, Polars, all these like different Fitbits, these different bits of tech that we like to use these days, is they do generally give you a resting heart rate. Now I look on the Garmin Connect app, it gives me the last 7 days my resting heart rate. So for me, I can take that number and take my max, and then I can actually input it in, and it will also calculate all my zones for me in the app, in the Garmin app. I'm sure Polar has something similar, and as I say, the MyZone app itself, if you give it that, it puts your resting in from its data that it has, and it also calculates for you. So it works out your zones. So there is formulas for it. A quick Google search will tell you your resting heart rate and your max and what that formula looks like, and gives you the data if you want a hard copy of it. There is always the old school way of doing it and getting up first thing in the morning and checking a pulse, finding for 60 seconds how many beats per minute, and that gives you a resting heart rate too. So once you've got these calculations, once you've got these numbers, what do you do with them? It's a lot of information. What does it actually mean? So when you're training for a sport like Hyrox, you're generally going to be around that zone 4, and that's around 80 to 90% of your max heart rate. So the higher you can push that, obviously, the quicker you're probably going to go, but it's something to be aware of when training. Now, zone 4 is really, really tough to be in. It's something that you do need to train. It's something that you will want to push because that is your anaerobic threshold. Now, there's a lot more details to go into on that, but realistically, that's where you're going to race. So if you're not getting into that zone, now zone 3, just below it, 70 to 80%, still feels pretty hard, but you're not racing there. So for me, I like to make sure that I'm in that zone 4. You're not going to push that every day. It's something that is, a couple of times a week to try and make sure you're in that competition state. So train really hard in those sessions and make sure we're getting that in, because that's where you're going to race. You're not going to race in zone 3, so there's not a lot of point of pushing those numbers all the time, because it still feels pretty hard. It's pretty taxing on the body, so you're not going to get the bang for your buck out of that session. I coach people and find that people spend a lot of time in this zone 3. It's a bit of a grey area, whereas zone 2, zone 1 is more of an active recovery. Zone 2 is perfect for those long runs, and where you should be spending a lot of your training time. So it's a great way to develop that base background, that level of training needed to build your endurance, to help the body adapt and to become more efficient. So these zone 2 workouts is where we want to spend a lot of our time. We want to spend a lot of time working out here and going through the motions, learning our skill, but we need this zone 4 stuff. So the little bit in between, active recovery for zone 1, definitely worth a session in there a week, but establishing these zones will really help you come away and go, right, I've got my watch, I've got my MyZone app, whatever it may be. I use both. I find the watch a little bit when trying to run. Did you like the actions? When trying to run, it's easy just to have the MyZone. It's in one corner in the where the sled is. It's nice and simple for me to be able to go, right, clock it. Zone 4 for me is yellow. As long as I'm in that yellow for these periods, trying to establish a session of anything from like 8 up to an hour. I mean, an hour is, you've been doing this a while, but as long as you're in that heart rate zone for that kind of period of time, in that yellow, you're in the right zone for your race day. And practice makes perfect. We are pushing our anaerobic threshold. We are allowing the body to get used to building up that lactic acid and allowing it to learn how to flush it out quicker, so you can be more competitive on the day, you can be more efficient. So that's kind of what we're going for. But it is taxing. You're not going to want to do it every day, and that's where your zone 2 comes in to help build those efficiencies and help build the body up and get a little bit stronger every day. On top of that, there is a 5th zone, zone 5, and this is 90% plus of your heart rate. So this zone is like sprinters. This is like your 1 rep max kind of stuff. This is your, up to a minute, maybe 90 seconds of max effort. So it's short, sharp bursts of power. Still really important. It's threshold stuff. It's going to help boost your power, your explosiveness. It's going to make you an even stronger athlete. However, this is super taxing. This is a really killer session if you go into that VO2 zone 5 kind of area. It's not something you're going to do very often, and it's going to really take it out of the body. So if you're a new athlete, it's not something I'd be suggesting pushing into very often at all. And even as a seasoned athlete, it's probably still only once or twice a week. You need to go there, especially if you're training for something like Hyrox. It's good to get it in. It's definitely worthwhile building into a program. If you are looking for more help on a program, probably reach out and we'll have a conversation around that and get you to your next goal. I hope you found this information useful. Hopefully you can start building it into your own programs. Hopefully you can start to see it coming through and understanding what you're trying to achieve. The whole idea is to be training with purpose, with intent, and to know what you're going in to do. Floating around this zone 3 area is generally not that beneficial for us, especially when we're training for something like Hyrox. So don't be training too hard and overtraining and then missing the point of the session, but not quite hard enough to get the full benefit. So having these clear guidelines, I hope that helps you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you do enjoy this kind of stuff, hit like, hit subscribe, it really does help, and I'll catch you next time.